I have seen Moana 2, and the big question is it as good as the first? Not quite, but it's still a good movie and very much holds its own, so let's talk about it. Now, as always, if you want to see what I gave this movie out of 10, head over to my shorts, TikTok, or Instagram and check out my one-take movie review on this movie. And if you've already seen the film, let me know your thoughts on it in the comments. But without further ado, let's talk about Moana 2. So originally, this was actually supposed to be a series on Disney+, but they later decided to turn it into a movie because, well, the original Moana is the most watched movie on Disney+, and also made a bunch of money, so why not just take this series and make it into a sequel to make a bunch more money and have another movie on Disney+ that's going to be watched a bunch of times just like the original. So in this movie, Moana is now a master wayfinder, and she must go on another journey across the sea in order to find this lost island so she can break a curse and connect all of her people throughout all of the oceans. Starting things off with the good, I of course have both Moana and Maui. Both Auli'i, Cravalho, and The Rock have not missed a beat when it comes to playing these two characters. Their relationship is just as strong as it was in the original, and when it's just Maui and Moana on screen in this movie, this thing is truly at its best. However, I will add that we don't get to see as much of that relationship because Maui really doesn't show up in this thing until about halfway through. We know where he is in the first half of the movie, but he's not really a big part of the story yet, and in my opinion, you definitely feel his missing presence in the first half of this thing. A big part of why that first one was so good was because of the dynamic between Maui and Moana, and since we didn't get as much of that relationship in this one, it just kind of pulled some of the heart out of this movie for me. Now, I know The Rock has received a lot of criticism for essentially playing the same character in all of his movies, but when it comes to Maui, this is easily his best role. He's charismatic, charming, funny, and when it was finally time for Maui to become a bigger part of the story in this movie, it immediately got better for me. Maui and Moana are one of my favorite character duos, and Auli'i, Cravalho, and The Rock always do an excellent job playing them. I just wish we got to see more of that relationship in this movie. Next up for the good are the visuals, and this is one thing that I think this movie did better than the original. This is a very vibrant and colorful film. There are lots of shots in this where you're just like, whoa, that is really nice to look at. The animation was just great, and it has tons of detail, which really helped immerse you back into this world of Moana. And this is saying a lot because the visuals in the first movie still very much hold up today, but this movie just took it to another level in my opinion. And finally, for the good, I have the third act. Now, I thought they had a really cool third act and then ending that was not only super cool for Moana's character, but they also did some amazing world building as well. And I left this movie wanting to explore more of that world now that they have opened the door and expanded it. Moana 3 hasn't been confirmed yet, but they definitely teased that there's probably going to be another one at the end of this movie. But anyways, it wasn't until we got to the third act that I really locked into this movie, and it's no surprise that the third act is when we spend the most time with Maui and Moana because they are the best part of this movie. But it also had a really cool battle in there as well, and again, I thought they ended this movie in a really cool way that left it open for a sequel and left you wanting to explore more of this world that they have now introduced you to. Moving on to the so-so, and the first thing I have here are the new side characters. Now, I liked all of the new characters in this movie. I thought they were fun, but it just kind of felt like they were along for the ride in this thing, and they really didn't serve much to the overall plot. Now, let me preface this by saying I'm not including Moana's little sister in this because their relationship was absolutely adorable in this movie, and I need them in every single Moana project following this movie. However, for the others, they just weren't given all that much to do, and given that this was originally going to be a series, I feel like they would have had more of a role in that because we would have had the time to really expand and explore those characters. But since they turned it into a movie, I'm guessing some of those scenes got cut just to save time, but that essentially turned them into background characters for this movie, in my opinion. And honestly, after watching the movie, I fully believe that Moana would have been just fine going on this journey alone and only taking Heihei and Pua. Next up for the so-so, I have the music, and the music in this was just fine. There weren't any bad songs, but there definitely weren't any songs that you're going to be listening to after you get done watching this movie like you did the first one. These songs just weren't as catchy as the ones in the original. They were fine for what they were, but there are definitely no songs songs like How Far I'll Go or You're Welcome in this one. And finally, getting into the bad, and the first thing I have here is the villains. Now, the main villain doesn't show up in this movie until the very end, and there was also another character by the name of Matangi. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but they were setting her up to be a villain as well, but then she turned out to not really be a villain at the end of the day. And I felt like there was some potential there with her because it seemed like she was a really cool character, but they just didn't do much with her, so it felt like she was kind of wasted. For the main villain, Talo, they just kind of talk about him throughout this entire movie until he finally shows up in the final act, but they do make it pretty clear that this is probably not the last time we are going to see him, but I still wish we got to see more of him in this movie. And finally, for the bad, I have the story. Now, I really enjoyed the third act of this movie, but it was really the first and second acts that I was indifferent on. It felt like they knew exactly what they wanted to do for that third act and the ending, but they didn't quite know how to get there. On top of that, this was the part where Maui didn't have much of a role, and as I said before, his absence in the first half of the movie was felt, in my opinion. It felt like something was missing, and quite literally someone was missing, because once he finally reunited with Moana, this movie immediately got better. And although I really liked the ending, it just felt like this movie stumbled to get there. But at the end of the day, this is still a good movie that I enjoyed my time with. Moana and Maui are just as good as they were in the original. It's got great visuals, and after that ending, I wouldn't mind seeing more of this world. The original is tough to match, but this one holds its own, so I would definitely recommend it. Those are my thoughts on Moana 2. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments, and as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, get your Eazy Apparel at shopeasyapparel.com. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.